This is Alice in Muggleland, with your hosts, Billius McDaniels of the Nomad's Liaison Office, and Alice, the Muggle that got lost following the White Rabbit.
Lumos! This is another edition of Alice in Muggleland. I am your host, Billius McDaniels of the Nomad's Liaison Office, and we're going to go into the next chapter of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or otherwise known as Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And with me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Alice. Hello, Alice. How are you doing?
Hi, Bill. I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. We're also going to be going through and recording a special episode after this that's only going to be on the Patreon, but we'll get into those details later. Because this is a big chapter in regards to the Harry Potter series. This is the episode of The Sorting Hat, which is chapter 7. After this is over, we're going to go get Alice sorted and see what happens with that.
People have been trying to get me sorted for years. It hasn't happened yet, but maybe today.
Let's see if the sorting hat actually puts you in a house, or you be the first one that says, you're a squib, and then I'll actually have to explain what a squib is.
Yeah, you still haven't done that, by the way. Don't think I'm going to forget. I'm not going to forget. So, the sorting hat.
As we left off last chapter, they just pulled in via their little boats to Hogwarts.
Yes, they're met by Hagrid. They're met by Professor McGonagall. She's looking very stylish in her emerald green robes. She's not in cat form, which was a little disappointing for me, personally. But anyway, she's there, and she leads them into the hallway. We start to get some descriptions of Hogwarts itself. And basically, it's very, very big. That's the general description. This is a big school, and they have archaic forms of lighting. So the very first form of lighting we come across are flaming torches. Okay. Always convenient when you need to put together a mob. Just grab the flaming torches and some pitchforks. You're good to go. Anyway, but that's not what happens in this chapter. In this chapter, instead, the first year kids are told they're going to be sorted. And that's it. That they're left to basically sit around with each other and contemplate what the test is going to be like to get them sorted into the houses.
And you get to hear some of the thought patterns and everything about what it might be, because McGonagall kind of leaves them on a cliffhanger about how it's done.
Right. Yeah, so they're just left on their own to fantasize about how horrible this process is going to be. Turns out it is so much worse than any of them imagined. It's a singing hat. So
I liked some of the things in that part at the very beginning in regards to Fred says it hurts a lot. Hermione's like, I wonder what spell I'm going to have to use because I've memorized everything. And Harry's like, a test? What the heck?
Yeah. Harry is he seems unprepared for this. He believes that he is going to be the first person who might not get sorted into a house, which is kind of interesting. To talk about that for a second, it's in this world, he is famous. He's very powerful. He's very wealthy. He's found out about all of those things, and yet that does not override his experience at school, where he wasn't picked for athletic teams or wasn't let into different, groups of kids. And so even though he is now, famous and wealthy, that doesn't change the fact that deep down he feels like he doesn't belong. And so, as he's waiting his turn under the hat, he's thinking that he might be the first person where they go, oh, a mistake has been made, and they're going to kick him off and put him back on the train. That was really telling, that once you've ingrained that belief that you don't belong and nobody wants you, it's very, very hard to get over that, even when you have a lot of evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, the way that the British do their sorting into houses is a lot different than how we did this for our school. In regards to the Sorting Hat song, I think that it gives a good breakdown of what the houses are about.
I absolutely agree, and I would really like it if you would sing that song for our listeners.
Oh, you may not think I'm pretty, but don't judge on what you see. I'll eat myself if you could find a smarter hat than me. You can keep your bowlers black, your top hat sleek and tall, for I'm the Hogwarts Sorting Hat, and I can cap them all. There's nothing hidden in your head the Sorting Cat can't see, so try me on, and I will tell you where you ought to be. You might belong in Gryffindor, who dwell the brave at heart, whose daring nerve and chivalry set Gryffindors apart. You might belong in Hufflepuff, where they are just and loyal. Those patient Hufflepuffs are true and unafraid of toil. Or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, if you're a ready mind, where those of wit and learning will always find their kind. Or perhaps in Slytherin, you'll make your real friends. Those cunning folks use any means to achieve their ends. So put me on, don't be afraid, and don't get in a flap. You're in safe hands, though I have none, for I'm a thinking cap.
Well done. That was incredible. I did not think you were actually going to sing it for me. Thank you. Wow. You're welcome, listeners. That was amazing. Yeah, one of my issues with books, of course, is they love to put in song lyrics, but they don't tell you how it's supposed to be sung, so you're just left to your own imagination. But now we know how that song was supposed to be sung. It'll be never sung better. That was just great. Anyway, back to the hat.
So before Harry gets sorted, Hermione gets sorted, Neville gets sorted, and Harry does notice that it takes longer for certain people to get sorted than others. That actually has a term, and it's called a hat stall. Usually it is for any time the hat's on the head for more than 5 minutes because of what we find out later when Harry actually gets the hat. Basically, the hat is basically fighting with the person about what house they're supposed to be in.
All right, okay. Interesting.
A little bit of detail about the sortings that happen with Hermione and Neville, which don't really ever come up, is that with the sorting hat for Hermione, he was basically fighting with Hermione over Gryffindor or Ravenclaw, and for Neville was trying to fight hard to go into Hufflepuff because he didn't think he was brave enough to go into Gryffindor.
That's interesting. So it's kind of like they're mostly in one house or another, but they're part of a different house as well. Like they could have gone either way.
They could have, but they're technically just of this house. But certain people like Malfoy, for example, they barely placed the hat on his head, and he was in Slytherin.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's no question about it. Other times there's questions about it.
Interesting. That's good to know. So why do you think Hermione was drawn to Gryffindor as opposed to Ravenclaw? Because she seems like Ravenclaw to me. I mean, just based on what the hat had to say about it.
Think of it this way. Hermione is Muggle-born, so she's not seeing this as just being the best. Deep down, she's seeing this as an adventure into magic. She's been taken out of her world and brought into a world where instead of being all scared and unsure like Harry is, she's grabbing the bull by the horns and she's like, let's go for a ride. She's like, I'm all prepared. I'm going to see this as it is. I'm going to know this is great. I think Hermione would be a crappy student if she was in a Muggle school. I think she'd be bored.
Interesting. Good to know. So getting back to Neville and Hermione, they both end up in Gryffindor, as does Ron eventually, though they go in alphabetical order, so he's after Harry. This is definitely a trope that we see where people are, being accepted into different things based on their skills. We saw this probably more recently in the Divergent series of books. I don't know if Divergent was inspired by the sorting hat houses, but it kind of seems like maybe it was. I would like to know an answer to that question, actually. Are you a big Harry Potter fan? anyway, so that was kind of, I feel like we've seen this before, but in retrospect, as I think about it, the
Right.
examples I have of it actually come after this. So while I'm sure there are, previous stories about people being, drawn into different groups, like the very, very specific sorting ceremony thing, that seems to be pretty unique. I could be wrong. I think that's interesting. And I do think it's interesting that it's like it's basically a conversation between the hat and the person as to, where they want to go. I thought it was interesting that Harry, the hat, was trying to put him in Slytherin. There's this sort of, again, I mentioned this before, there's this dark undercurrent that we're not seeing very much of yet in this book, but it's hinting that it's there. And another example of that is when Professor Snape gets introduced and makes eye contact with Harry, and Harry's scar hurts. So clearly, that's some sort of foreshadowing of Professor Snape's role in Harry's life. Interested to see where that develops. More generally, though, while the whole sorting ceremony into different houses, or however you want to term that, seems kind of unique. And anyway, I'm not coming up with any examples of that before this. What's not unique is the idea of a magical hat or a magical article of clothing. Like, that goes all the way back to Greek mythology again, with Hermes and his winged hat. So magical articles of clothing, pretty common. People have been pulling rabbits out of hats for years. I did think it was pretty funny that, Harry thought that maybe he would have to produce a rabbit from this dirty hat. Why, by the way, why is the hat dirty?
I think
Couldn't they clean it
I think
off?
he just sees it as dirty. I think it's just like extremely aged, because this hat was created when Hogwarts was first made. So when the four founders of Hogwarts moved on, so to speak, they would have something that would be able to put them into the houses based on their own criterias.
Oh, okay. So how did they do the sorting in America? You mentioned that it was different.
No, we have different houses.
Is it the same four houses?
And basically we go into a room and we step into the middle of the floor and we're around statues of the houses, and they just then, like, we don't like converse like the hat does. We suddenly, up to 4 houses can actually pick us, and that's only happened once in history. But if multiple houses go through and pick you, you get to choose which house you want to go from the ones that picked you.
Oh, interesting. What happened in your case?
I was only selected by Horned Serpent.
I see. And which house is that the most similar to?
It all depends. It all depends depending on your viewpoint of it. Some say that the Horned Serpent is closer to Ravenclaw. Some say that it's a Slytherin Ravenclaw hybrid. Some people say that it's a Hufflepuff Ravenclaw hybrid. A lot of the houses in the American school, people would tend to be hybrids. Especially, it looks considered that way because our school was founded way after Hogwarts was founded, of course.
And is it considered a really personal question to ask somebody whose house they're in?
No, not really.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Most wizards already know because people have gone to school with them and things of that nature. So they kind of know, oh yeah, I remember him in school. They were such and such or whatnot.
Oh, okay.
Because it's all public like this, so like the Hogwarts sorting.
I see. Interesting. If you had gone to Hogwarts, which house do you think you would have been sorted into?
Hufflepuff.
Is that the one you would have wanted to go into, or would you have had an argument with the hat?
I have no idea if I'd have an argument with the hat. My family came to the United States from Ireland, and when the people that went to Hogwarts, they were all Hufflepuff, so I'd probably be Hufflepuff too.
Good to know. And later today, we're going to find out which house I belong in. Very exciting. Do you have any predictions?
I have predictions, but I'm not going to give them over the air.
That's not fair.
I'm going to predict that before you start, when we do the special episode for the Patreon.
Oh, okay. Because I want you on record. I want a record of which house you think I belong in.
I will be on record. Don't worry about that.
Good.
In this chapter, another point is brought up about the school rules are brought up, and especially in this case, it's the the corridor that is you cannot go into, or you will
Yeah.
die a horrible death.
That's a little bit more, let's say, some not so subtle foreshadowing. I suspect that there's something in that corridor, and we'll find out what it is later on. Is that going to be in this book, or is
Yes,
that
it's
going
going
to
to
be
be in this book.
Oh, okay, that's something to look forward to. Exciting. Yeah. So the other thing I really want to talk about here is the food situation. Are all of the meals like this? Like it's all self-cleaning and it just appears and then disappears? And how are the utensils disinfected? Like, are they
Magic.
actually clean or they just look clean?
Magic.
Magic. Okay, great. Is that going to be the answer to a lot of my questions? Just magic.
Well,
So-
in questions like that, like how are they cleaned? Magic, yes.
Is the food that appears influenced by who's eating? So is the fact that Harry's favorite things, is that a coincidence, or is that because it's Harry? We're at Harry's table, and the other people at the table are seeing different foods that they like.
That's, I believe, because it's brought up a little bit in book 4. I think that really has to be with what type of local culture the food is in general. Like, this is England, so this is the opening feast. So these are all feast foods.
Okay, so this isn't influenced by Harry's particularly likes all these foods. It's just a coincidence. Okay, I was curious about that. It seemed possible that, from Hermione's point of view, it was a bunch of different foods because that was what she liked. If it was me, it would be pizza and sushi. So, but no, you're saying it's a feast. So it's feast food.
Yeah, because they go through and they talk about food throughout the whole entire series. Like during breakfast, they're gonna have normal breakfast stuff. They'll have different main courses for lunch and dinner and things like that. It's nothing like this is just like a full spread because it's the opening feast.
Sure.
But yes, whenever I read through these feasts, it gets me hungry. So.
Yeah, well, it sounded like a really good deal. And I definitely like the fact that they don't have to do a lot of dishes. So that's nice. The mental picture, painted in this chapter is really something. You've got the long tables with the gold cups on them and the shiny ghost. And, it even goes so far as to note that, the only thing shinier than the ghost is Dumbledore's gray hair and the candles floating in the air. I mean, it just sounds really beautiful. And then you look up and it looks like the night sky. And, it's specifically enchanted to look like the night sky. It sounds like a really beautiful, like I would kind of like to see that banquet hall. It sounds really gorgeous.
Well, something else is brought up in this chapter that you're going to hear a lot in all the books, and it's going to be the same character that brings it up. Hermione and Hogwarts: A History.
Ah, okay. So we're going to get more. She's kind of like our guide at this point. She's going to be stepping in and giving us more.
Anything that has to do with Hogwarts in regards to historical facts, all of a sudden Hermione says something. She's like, look, I read it in Hogwarts: A History. When are you guys going to read this book?
We see Professor Quirrell again, except now he's wearing kind of a weird turban. He's talking to Professor Snape, who, as I mentioned before, makes eye contact with Harry, and Harry feels this pain in his scar, and he's like really subtle about it and claps his hand over his forehead. I don't know why I thought that was kind of funny, but it's like, I'm not sure you want to tell the guy who's causing the pain in your head that he's causing you pain. Like maybe try to play that cool and not clap your hand over your scar, but just a theory. But Harry is not exactly the most smooth operator just yet. I was fascinated by the ghosts a little bit. So, Hogwarts apparently is just lousy with ghosts. There are ghosts everywhere. And each house has their own ghost. And then there's other poltergeists that we meet later on when they go up to the Gryffindor common room. On the way there, they run into a poltergeist.
Peeves,
which is a good name for a poltergeist because I bet he peeves a lot of people off.
Yep.
The paintings move. It's just kind of an aside, but they talk about how the paintings talk amongst themselves, and then they reach a painting on the wall that asks for the password, and that's how they enter the Gryffindor house. It does seem a little bit, and I don't know if they were trying to give this impression, like either the author was really trying to give the impression that Harry was just really, really tired that this was a really long day, or the food was poisoned. Not poisoned, but drugged. Because it keeps going on and on about like how tired Harry is, and he falls asleep immediately. And on my reading of this was like, is there something in the food? Like, are they drugging the food so that they go to sleep? I don't know about that. It just struck me as odd to have a lot about how tired Harry was. You would think that the pure adrenaline of being in a place like this and seeing all of these fantastic things, because you were talking about how Hermione is coming in from the world and is exploring the magical world, and all of this is new to her. But she's prepared a little bit. Harry hasn't. Like, I would expect him to be gawking at absolutely everything, and he's not. He's tired. He wants to go to sleep. So I did wonder if he hadn't been drugged a little bit.
See, putting it in that perspective, I could see like Hermione staying up and being like ooh ah oh and looking at everything like this. Harry has gone through, because Harry's not prepared. He's been hit with so much information on like one day.
So you think it's just it's like mental overload?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that could be that. Anyway, he's very tired. Like, just really, really tired. Let's see. So he has a weird dream that he doesn't remember. And so I thought that was interesting, because people have dreams in these stories all the time, but usually it's like they wake up and they're deeply troubled by this upsetting dream, and they can remember bits and pieces of it, or they remember the whole thing. It's like, no, very specifically, he has this really scary dream about being, crushed by Professor Quirrell's turban, and he wakes up and doesn't remember the dream at all. Prophetic dreams are not that useful if you can't remember them. So we'll see if that continues to happen to Harry or not. I hope that he doesn't end up crushed by the turban, but since there's multiple books, I suspect that is not his ultimate fate. I think we've kind of covered most of this. We meet Dumbledore finally. Well, we don't meet him, but he's there. Or I should say, Harry meets Dumbledore finally. We met Dumbledore back in chapter 1. And Dumbledore has everybody sing the school song to their own tune, which I thought was pretty funny.
Hogwarts, Huggy Huggy Hogwarts, teach us something, please.
Okay.
Whether we are old and
I
old
regret
or
everything now. I really regret asking you to sing the hat song.
The interesting stuff.
This song specifically doesn't have a tune, so I didn't need you to sing it, because it could be any tune I wanted. Damn it, Pill. Yeah, okay. Great.
See, if I was really prepared, I would have been continued to sing that through the whole entire complaint part.
I have created a monster. Just wow. Yeah. All right.
This monster and Alice will be coming back next week in the chapter called The Potions Master. But before we go into that, Alice, as I ask you every week, who is currently your favorite character?
Right now, I think it's probably still Hagrid. He's, he made just a very brief couple of appearances here, but I really liked the moment where after Harry was sorted, he made eye contact with Hagrid, and Hagrid, kind of gave him a thumbs up or whatever, and good job. I feel like Hagrid is the kind of character who he would have responded that way no matter which house Harry ended up in. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but it just feels like, Hagrid is this very supportive person in Harry's life. Harry is still just along for the ride, but you keep telling me that's going to change. Looking forward to it. So
we are going to be off then until next week when we go over the next chapter, The Potions Master. Until then, folks, like I said, we have special episodes up. We're going to be having a new special episode up after this one on our Patreon, which is going to be at www.patreon.com/VicariousMuggleland. Last time we had the special episode up, we had the episode where Alice got her wand, and next we will go through and get Alice sorted. So all of these are going to be special episodes that will not be released on where we get your podcasts. Go to Patreon, sign up, and you'll be able to get some more special, along with other reward tiers that we thought of that we feel will bring out more to the podcast community. So, Alice, anything else that you'd like to say?
No, I think you covered it all. Thanks, everybody, for listening. catch us next time when we start talking about potions.
Nox.
Who then passes them off to Professor McMonagall at the beginning of this chapter.
McGonagall.
McGonagall. One of these days I'm going to get that right.
There's some people that have talked about these books, and they just call her the Cat Lady because they don't want to mispronounce or misspell her name because they respect her that much. But we'll get you to actually get it right.
McGonagall.
McGonagall.